My name is Margaret, and I have learned that memory does not always arrive through thoughts. Sometimes it comes through the body first, through breath, through a feeling you cannot explain until it has already taken hold of you. That morning it came through a smell. It was an ordinary morning, quiet, slow, the way my days usually are now. I was standing near the sink, the window slightly open, letting fresh air drift in. I had just finished washing my hands when I noticed the soap resting on the small dish beside the basin. It was nothing special, plain, pale, almost forgettable. But when I picked it up and the scent reached me, something inside me shifted. I froze. The world did not disappear, but it softened at the edges. My chest tightened in a way I hadn't felt in years, and for a moment I forgot to breathe. The smell was gentle, clean, almost old-fashioned. It wasn't strong, it didn't demand attention, and yet it did, because I knew that smell. I had not thought about it for decades. I had not searched for it. I had not even known I remembered it. But the moment it touched my senses, my body reacted before my mind could catch up. My hands trembled slightly as I held the soap. "No," I whispered, unsure who I was speaking to, but the memory had already begun. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I was no longer standing in my home at 72. I was somewhere else, somewhere warmer, somewhere smaller, somewhere that smelled exactly like this. I felt it before I saw it, the warmth of a kitchen, the sound of water running, the quiet rhythm of a house that felt safe. My heart began to pound softly, not with fear, but with recognition. This was my childhood. Not all of it, just one small piece, but sometimes one piece is enough to bring everything back. I sat down slowly, still holding the soap, my legs suddenly weak. The chair creaked under my weight, grounding me in the present, but my mind was already far away. I remembered standing on a stool beside the sink, my hands barely reaching the water. I remembered my mother standing behind me, guiding my movements, reminding me not to waste soap. "Just a little," she used to say, "that's enough." I could hear her voice so clearly that it startled me. My throat tightened and my eyes filled with tears without warning. It surprised me how fast it happened. I wasn't thinking about her. I wasn't trying to remember. I was simply holding a bar of soap. And yet, there she was. I inhaled again, slowly, deliberately, as if the scent might disappear if I didn't hold on to it carefully. The smell wrapped itself around me like a familiar blanket. Clean hands, fresh towels, morning light, safety. I realized then that scent is different from memory. Memory you can avoid. You can choose not to open certain doors, but scent walks right past your defenses. It enters without asking. I felt small, not weak, small, the way you feel when you suddenly remember that you were once cared for without having to earn it, that someone once washed your hands because they loved you, not because it was their job. Tears slid quietly down my cheeks. I didn't wipe them away right away. I let them come. They felt honest. I whispered, "I forgot this." Not the smell, the feeling. I had forgotten what it felt like to be that child, standing quietly, listening to the sound of water, trusting that everything would be all right because an adult was nearby, because my mother was nearby. I pressed the soap gently between my palms, feeling its smooth surface, and I imagined her hands, stronger than mine were now, younger, steadier. I imagined how she used to hum softly while she worked, never realizing how deeply those small sounds would settle into my bones. I opened my eyes again, and the present returned slowly. The sink, the window, my home. But something had changed. The room felt fuller, as if the past had stepped in quietly and taken a seat beside me. I sat there for a long time, breathing in that scent, letting it move through me at its own pace. I didn't rush it. I didn't analyze it. I simply allowed myself to feel what my body remembered. I realized then that time moves only forward, but that isn't true. Time moves inward too. It hides in ordinary objects. It waits patiently. And sometimes all it takes is a bar of soap to bring it back. I thought about how many times I had washed my hands without noticing the smell, how many times I had rushed through small moments thinking they didn't matter. And yet here I was, sitting still, undone by something so simple. I laughed softly through my tears. I whispered, "Life is strange." At 72, I have learned many things. I have lost people. I have gained wisdom. I have learned how to survive quiet days. But I had almost forgotten how easily the past could reach out and touch me. The soap rested in my hands like a bridge between who I was and who I am. And in that moment, I let myself travel back, not to escape the present, but to remember that every version of me still lives inside this body, even the little girl. She was still there, tucked quietly inside me, waiting for a moment like this to be remembered. I sat very still, afraid that if I moved too quickly, the feeling would vanish. The soap was warm now from my hands, and the scent lingered in the air around me, gentle but persistent, like it knew it had been invited. I closed my eyes again. This time, the memory didn't rush in. It unfolded slowly, like a curtain being pulled back one careful inch at a time. I could see the old sink clearly now. The porcelain was chipped near the edge, and the faucet always squeaked when it turned. I remembered how the water never seemed to get the temperature right away. Too cold at first, then suddenly too hot. My mother's hand would reach in quickly, testing the water before mine could feel it. She always went first, always. "Careful," she would say, not loudly, just enough to be heard. I smiled faintly at that memory. Even now, decades later, I still test water with caution. I never realized where that habit came from until this very moment. I thought it was just age making me careful, but no, it was love that taught me first. The smell of the soap grew stronger in my mind, even though the bar itself hadn't moved. I remembered how it used to sit on the edge of the sink, slightly cracked from use. We didn't have many different soaps. We used the same one until it was too thin to hold. Nothing was wasted. Everything had a purpose. I remembered how proud I felt when my mother finally trusted me to wash my hands on my own. She would stand nearby, pretending not to watch, but I could feel her attention on me anyway. That quiet supervision was her way. She never hovered, but she never left. That memory made my chest ache, because that kind of presence is rare. It is the kind of love that doesn't announce itself, it simply stays. My breathing slowed as I let the past settle around me. I noticed how my shoulders had relaxed, how my jaw was no longer tight. My body remembered safety before my mind did. I whispered softly, "You were there." It felt important to say it out loud. So many people talk about childhood like it is something distant and separate, like a story that ends once you grow up. But sitting there, holding that soap, I realized childhood doesn't end. It just becomes quieter. It waits inside you, patient, until something familiar calls it back. I opened my eyes again and looked at my hands. They were old hands now, wrinkled, thin, veins visible beneath the skin. Hands that had done many things, worked, held, comforted, lost, survived. And yet those same hands had once been small and damp, held gently under running water by my mother. Time is strange like that. It stacks versions of us on top of each other and expects us to carry them all. I leaned back slightly in my chair, still holding the soap, and let my thoughts wander further. The smell pulled me past the sink now, past the kitchen, into the rest of the house I grew up in. I remembered the hallway that always felt cool even in summer. I remembered the way the floor creaked near my parents' bedroom. I remembered the quiet rule that we walked softly there. I remembered evenings when my mother would wash her hands at the sink after a long day, the same soap foaming between her palms. I would sit at the table nearby, watching, listening, feeling safe just being close. She never rushed those moments. She didn't know they would become memories. Most people don't. That thought made my eyes fill again. We don't know which ordinary moments will become sacred later. We don't know which smells will follow us through life, hiding until the right moment. We don't know that one day, decades later, we will sit alone and cry over something as simple as soap. I laughed softly, shaking myself at that. "If only you knew," I murmured, not sure who I was talking to, my younger self, my mother, or time itself. The scent began to fade slightly as the air shifted, and panic fluttered in my chest. I brought the soap closer instinctively, breathing in again, deeper this time. I didn't want to lose it yet. I wasn't finished. I realized then that what I missed wasn't just my mother. I missed being noticed without asking. I missed being protected without explanation. I missed the feeling that someone older and stronger was quietly nearby, ready to step in if the world became too much. As an adult, and especially now as an elderly woman, people expect you to be that person for yourself. And for the most part, I have been. I learned how to stand alone. I learned how to be careful, how to endure, how to keep going even when things hurt. But sitting there, breathing in that familiar scent, I allowed myself to admit something I rarely say out loud. I am tired. Not tired of living. Tired of always being the one who knows. Tired of always being the one who adjusts. Tired of always being the one who holds it together quietly. The soap didn't judge me for that thought. It didn't try to fix it. It simply reminded me that once I didn't have to be strong. Once I was allowed to be small. And that memory alone felt like rest. I placed the soap gently back onto the dish and watched it sit there, ordinary again. But it wasn't the same.
Not to me. It had done its work. The room felt quieter now, but also fuller, as if something long gone had passed through and left warmth behind. I wiped my cheeks with the back of my hand and took a slow breath. I realized something important then. Memory doesn't come to hurt us. It comes to remind us who we have been loved by. And in remembering that, we remember how to love ourselves a little more gently too. I sat there a few moments longer, letting the last of the scent linger in my mind. I didn't chase it when it began to fade. I let it go naturally, trusting that it would return someday in some other small, unexpected way. Because now I knew. Time doesn't always move forward. Sometimes it reaches back.
That thought stayed with me long after the scent had softened and the room returned to its ordinary stillness. I sat there quietly, hands resting in my lap now, no longer holding the soap, but still holding what it had given me. The past had come and gone, like a gentle visitor who didn't overstay, who knew exactly when to leave. I stood slowly and rinsed my hands again, this time without thinking, without urgency. The water ran over my skin, warm and steady. I dried my hands carefully and looked at my reflection in the mirror above the sink. An elderly woman looked back at me. Silver hair, gentle lines, eyes that had seen much, and behind those eyes, a lifetime. For a moment I studied my face the way you study someone you love deeply, not critically, not with regret, just attentively. I realized how many versions of myself lived there at once, the child at the sink, the young woman learning to stand on her own, the wife, the mother, the widow, the woman who learned how to be alone without becoming empty. All of them were still here. I smiled faintly, not because I felt happy, but because I felt whole. I carried my tea to the window and sat in my familiar chair. Outside, the world continued in its quiet way. A car passed, a neighbor walked by slowly. Somewhere nearby, a door closed. Ordinary sounds, present sounds. I breathed them in. It occurred to me then that memory doesn't come to replace the present. It comes to sit beside it, to remind us that our lives are layered, not linear, that we don't lose who we were when we become who we are. For years I had believed that growing old meant moving further and further away from my beginnings, that time stretched us so thin that the past became unreachable. But that day, with a bar of soap and a simple scent, I learned something kinder. The past is closer than we think. It waits in our senses, in our habits, in the way we pause before touching hot water, in the way certain smells make our hearts tighten without warning. I thought about how many memories we carry without knowing it, how many small things we overlook because we are busy surviving, and I wondered how many moments in my own life I had lived without realizing they would one day become precious. I didn't feel sad about that. It felt natural. Life doesn't announce its meaning in the moment. Meaning arrives later, quietly, when we are finally still enough to notice. As evening approached, I turned on a small lamp. The soft light filled the room, gentle and familiar. I reached for the soap once more, not to smell it again, but to place it carefully back where it belonged. I did it slowly, respectfully, as if it were something fragile. Then I left it there. I didn't cling to it. I didn't hide it away. I trusted that the memory had already done its work. That night, as I prepared for bed, I noticed how calm my body felt. Not light, not excited, calm. The kind of calm that comes when something inside you has settled into place. I lay down and pulled the blanket up, listening to the quiet. My thoughts drifted gently, not racing the way they sometimes do. I thought of my mother, not with sharp longing, but with gratitude. I thought of the small rituals she taught me without words. I thought of how love can live in ordinary things. And I understood something important. We don't need to hold on to memories tightly for them to stay with us. They stay because they are part of us. If you are listening to my story right now, I want you to remember this. When something ordinary suddenly moves you, a smell, a sound, a texture, don't push it away. Don't tell yourself it's silly. Let it happen. Let yourself feel small for a moment. Let yourself remember being cared for. It doesn't mean you are going backward. It means you are human. We all carry quiet doorways inside us, and every now and then life opens one, not to trap us in the past, but to remind us that we have been loved, that we have belonged, that we have roots. That night, as sleep finally came, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not nostalgia, not grief, but reassurance. The kind that says, you are not alone in time. Everything you have been walks with you. And sometimes all it takes is the faint scent of a simple soap to pull you back just long enough to remember that you have always been held.